Hi everybody, thank you for joining me this afternoon. Before we go any further, can I just check and make sure that everybody can hear me all okay? If you don't mind just putting a little comment in the chat box just to say, yes, Andrew, I can hear you. And also I'm going to go over to Louise as well, and she should be able to say something as well.
Hi everybody, I hope you can hear me.
So can anybody hear me? Everybody hear me? Going to be a little bit of a delay, I think. Can hear you, excellent. Okay, so everybody, thank you very much for joining me this afternoon here. It is the 6th of May, 2020. I am here joined by Louise and Jasmine. She's moderating for us today, so no naughty language, please, otherwise she will have you banned. So thank you all for joining me. Right, questions and answers hour. I'm going to try and make it around about an hour, maybe a little bit longer. I can see we've got lots and lots of questions. I'm only paying you for the hour. In fact, I'm not even paying you at all, am I? So, all right then, we are going to get started with some questions. I think we have quite a few people already asking lots and lots of questions. I do appreciate it. Thank you all for coming on. Do appreciate it. So before we go any further, just want to mention that our 12-hour marathon live stream will be going ahead. What we haven't done, perhaps what Louise may be able to do, is copy a link. We've got a questionnaire that we would like you to fill in, people who are watching this live stream. Go to the link that Louise is going to pop in the chat now in a moment, and just fill it in, because we want to know what sort of topics that you want us to show you over the 12 hours. You can rate them as, I really want to see it, I'm not that fussed, or I don't want to see them at all. There's about 12 different topics. You can go through those topics, let me know what you want to see, fill out a bit of information, like the country you're from, and what time you expect to be coming on to watch the live stream, something like that. We will then collate all the answers, and we will put together a fantastic timetable, full, jam-packed full of live demonstrations. We're going to be doing some live casting. We're going to be doing some questions and answers. We're going to be doing some live chat. We've also got some giveaways as well from countries, jewelry tool suppliers around the world are going to be donating items to basically give away. And you could win anything from a simple little at the bench pen, at the bench t-shirts, right up to a dust and rolling mill. So you'll have to stay tuned for that. We're not quite sure what date it is yet, but we know it's going to be a Saturday. I would have thought within the next month. The date has yet to be confirmed. Do we have the link to put on?
I've just been trying to retrieve it. I sent it to you earlier.
Yes.
If I log out of your account, is it going to mess up the... Because I need to log in as me, because it's not yet in
Jazz,
your...
Jazz.
Oh, fabulous. Yeah,
Yeah.
Jazz can get that.
Okay, no worries. So throughout the next 5 or 10 minutes, we'll put a little link up in the chat. Please click on it whilst you're watching this or afterwards and fill that in. We'd much, much appreciate it. So question-wise, we have some questions. Sorry, Louise. We have some questions. Yes, Louise.
We'll start off with Jane, who is asking, what sizes of ball/bud and finally setting burrs do I need to flush set a 3mm round stone? Watched your tutorial, but still struggling to seat the stone at the right depth and keep it in.
Okay, so 3mm. What you want to do, you want to use quite an aggressive burr to start off with. That would be something like a ball burr or a bud burr. I've got my little pad so I can draw on. So you said 3mm. So what I would do is drill a hole in the region of about 1.5 to 2 millimeters in diameter to start off with. Perhaps start off with a 1mm hole, then go down to perhaps a 1.5 millimeter hole. Then get your aggressive burr, like a ball burr, or as I said, a bud burr. Now, if your stone is going to be a 3mm, you want to go down diameter-wise about 2.3, 2.5 millimeter. And the reason why we use the aggressive burr is that it'll remove a lot of metal, and that is what we want to do. Then you would go on to something like a setting burr, straight-sided setting burr, where the teeth are a lot finer. So what you would do I have all my cameras sorted out today, so I hope you can all still hear me. We have our plate of metal like this. Hopefully you can see. Let me see if I can just zoom in a little bit on this. There we go, that's better. Okay, so then you would simply drill your hole through like that. That's in the region of 1.5 millimeter. Then you would get like a ball burr with the teeth. You would come down and you would take out quite a bit of metal. So you're going to be taking out something of the style of that much metal. Hope that is nice and clear. I'll go back to my overhead camera now. Then once you've taken out that much metal, then you would go over then to a straight-sided setting burr, which would look something like that. Now the teeth on this are a lot finer, and this won't remove a lot of metal. So this is the reason why we use these burrs, because they're quite aggressive and they remove a large portion of metal. So if you've got a 3 millimeter stone, this would be roughly around about 2.5 millimeter. And now you're up to the straight-sided setting burr, which is a 3 millimeter. Or if you've got something like a 2.9 millimeter, then you would use that burr to go down, then finally to make your area where your stone is going to sit. Something like that. I hope that is nice and clear. Now, how deep do you go with this setting burr? Well, if you're using a 3 millimeter stone, what you want to do is to have that bearing low enough that you can just about see the table sticking above the metal. We've got, you can just about see here, here's the level of the metal, here's the stone, the table is coming just slightly above the actual metal itself. If you have the stone too deep, especially a large stone, you're going to have too much metal having to come across to hold that stone in place. Have it too shallow and you won't have enough metal coming over. So the rule of thumb is up to stones, up to a 2 millimeter size in stones, the table has to be level with the metal. So the top of the stone has to be level with the metal. Anything above 2 millimeter, well then the table then has to protrude slightly above, otherwise you've got too much metal to actually hold, to force it over and burnish onto the stone. So the answer to the question was 3 millimeter stone, you use roughly around about 2.5 millimeter ball burr or a bud burr that would be that sort of shape. As you can see there, like that there. To make up the hole, to remove all the metal, then you use a fine straight-sided setting burr, preferably of exactly the same size as the stone or a fraction smaller to set the stone. That was a long-winded answer, wasn't it? Yeah, so there we go. Hope that answers your questions. Yes, Louise, next question.
Next is from Helly. Hello, Andrew and Louise. Can you please explain how you would go about setting a rough cut / raw diamond that has no flat surfaces or defined shape? I'm thinking about setting one into a ring.
Ooh, right. So like a natural diamond is like a double-ended pyramid. So a natural diamond would have nice straightish sides. So you can actually set that into a ring, providing the bezel, perhaps if you're using a bezel, is nice and high, so the stone doesn't come down into the finger. A bezel would be great because you can make bezels the right size, depending on the stone that you've got. You can claw set it. What I have done in the past is made a ring for a man and woman, and the diamond was this sort of shape. Okay, so the side profile was that shape, and they wanted that set into a ring, so I did like a tension ring that would be looking like that, coming around, and the stone was held between the shoulders where they came, and that locked the stone into place. What I also did was put a small little cage underneath joining onto this side of the shoulder and this side of the shoulder that was this sort of shape, because that followed the same contours of the diamond, like that there. And that held the sides together so the ring wouldn't pull apart and the stone would be lost. So if you've got a double-ended pyramid shape, do something like that. That's really, really cool. If it's something that gets quite irregular, you could always sort of set that flat if it is a flat surface on the stone, and then you could build up claws to hold it in place. But I'd really need to see the stone to have some sort of indication on exactly how you can set it. But that's what I have done in the past. This one here, as you can just about see there, and then a little cage underneath to hold the sides together. So that would be my tip for doing sort of natural shaped diamonds. Thank you, Helly, for that question. Thank you. Next question, Louise.
Next is from Jade. Hi, Andrew. Is there an easy way or a special tool to make prong settings, as I find it very difficult being left-handed and clumsy to solder all joints at the same time?
Okay, as it happens, in my drawer here, I've got a claw making jig. So this is something that you can buy. A lot of people rate it, a lot of people don't. And you can see if I can zoom in on this particular camera here. If I can, come on, there we go, brilliant, there we go, excellent. Okay, so this is the base. These are the little collets that we've got, just about to see, and the wires would run along these little grooves into place. You would make sure that those run nicely along it. Then once you have the wires running along the grooves, you would then put this over the top. He says, wrong way around. There we go. So the wires would be sticking out through the top. Then you would solder all the wires together as they all came out of the top of the little tube. The problem with this little device is that because it's completely all full of steel, it's going to take a lot of heat away from where you're soldering it. So you'd have to have quite a strong torch. Something like these little torches here are not going to be really sort of hot enough. So you've got these, you can have these with 4, you can have them with larger, with 6 claws, 8 claws, that you can just about see the little grooves on there that you can run your little claws into, and that would hold all the claws together in one place whilst you solder, so you don't have to go holding them all together. The other thing that I would suggest you can do is get a pair of cross-lock tweezers like these, and what you would do here, you would, along one of the jaws here, you would put a line, you would file a line into the jaw running in the direction of the jaw, the tweezers, and then at the opposite direction, going across the tweezer. And that will help you fasten and hold the claws together if you're soldering them onto a basket. Now, it's very hard for me to explain that, but we have done a film on At the Bench where I've actually used not adjusted, what am I trying to say? Brain's gone. To a modified pair of tweezers, a cross-lock tweezers to hold it into place. But something like this to hold them all together, or if you've got a soldering block, like this one here, or even a charcoal block, you can push the wires into the block to hold it all together whilst you come to solder it. Or another way you can do it, I'll get my pad out again for this. The other way to do it would be to get 2 wires and put them simply cross like this. Okay. So you'd simply have 1 wire going this way, 1 wire going this way. You then solder where those 2 meet. Then you would bend the wires into a U shape like this, and that would go underneath and that would come up behind. So then you've got these wires. Then you make sure those wires are nice and even. Then you would get a jump ring and you would slide then the jump ring. You turn this upside down. So So that goes that way, and then you'd get a jump ring and put that on the top of the wigwam. So the jump ring would be going around like that. That'd be going behind these claws. That's going that way there. And that then would be able to hold then all the claws together. You'd be able to solder each claw upon to the jump ring or the gallery nice and securely without all the claws falling apart. So there's a couple of ways that you could get all the claws together. If you're clumsy, it doesn't matter. It just takes practice and dexterity. But something like this little device that we've got, very, very good. As I said, it's a claw setting jig, or do a little cross and just turn down and make a bit of a wigwam with a jumping on the top of it. Thank you very much. Nice question. Thank you. Yes, Louise. Next question.
Next question is from Amanda, who would like to know, what are your must-have hammers? Would you recommend getting the Frets Goldsmith hammer?
It's almost as if we prepared these questions, and we haven't actually today. Where's my hammer? Oh my gosh. I do actually have a Frets Goldsmithing hammer. But someone's pinched it. Where is it? Would I recommend it? It's gone. Where's it gone? It was, wasn't there? Don't know. Anyway, would I recommend a Frets hammer? If Frets hammers are lovely because they're nicely weighted. So yes, I would recommend one, but they are quite expensive. So perhaps initially I wouldn't lay out that amount of money. What I would go for is perhaps something like a little planishing hammer. I'm actually very disappointed in myself here because I thought I actually had it. Oh, anyway, right. So, or you would get something like this type of hammer here, and this would be a nice shiny faced hammer. This has got a nice flat face. It's a slight little planishing, and that's got a little board on the end, and it's nicely weighted on the end of the hammer there. Any hammer would do. You can even just go to your local hardware store and buy something like this type of hammer here, a simple little ball peen, or you could go for a nice little cross peen hammer like this. As long as the actual faces are nice and shiny and polished. That is the most important part. If this face here isn't polished and shiny, every time you hammer, you're going to be putting marks into the metal. So if this face is nice and shiny, every time you hammer, all the marks are going to be nice and shiny. You don't want to make a texture in hammer, do you? Otherwise, you've got to take all those marks back out. So what I would do is get something like this one. This is going to be very similar to the Goldsmithing hammer that Frets has, and it's a darker wood handle, but it's got a nice end to it. It's nicely balanced. If you can, and you want to buy one, I think I've actually got a Frets stake as well here. Would I recommend it? Yeah, they're really good, but it does the same job as this. This one looks a lot nicer than this, but they do exactly the same job. So yeah, nice Goldsmithing hammer. You can't afford the Frets, which are perhaps 30, 40, 50 pounds. Just a simple little hammer. As long as you look after it, polish up the faces, it should be absolutely fine. Next question, Louise. Thank you for that.
Okay,
yes.
Caleb would like to know, what ratio do you use to melt platinum? Currently, I've only been able to fabricate it, not cast it.
The problem with platinum, it does require a massive amount of heat. You need specialist equipment to be able to melt the platinum. I've been able to melt small little slivers of platinum when we come to resize platinum rings, but I've never been able to get the torch hot enough to melt a fairly large, or perhaps 2, 3, 4 grams of platinum. You need a special type of crucible because it's platinum. You simply just can't use your ordinary crucible that you would melt your gold or your silver into. It needs to be a special platinum crucible, as well as the soldering block that you've got. That has to be a special platinum one. And also you should keep tools specifically for platinum work away from your gold and your silver, because those metals, the gold and silver, will contaminate the platinum if you've got them in your files or in your buff sticks, for instance. So what ratio to melt down? Here in the UK, we use 950 platinum, which is 950 parts platinum, 50 parts other metals. But to answer your question accurately, I haven't done, because I haven't got the equipment to melt it. It's very, very specialized, and I would simply leave that to the casting companies, because all we would do is purely buy in the required size metal and then perhaps roll it down if you want it a bit thinner, bit wider, or a bit thinner in diameter with a draw plate, and we would simply fabricate the platinum piece. But casting, I'm afraid we don't do that. I'm sorry. Next question.
Okay.
Yes.
Next question is from Anne. Do you need to remove materials before rhodium or gold plating? I'm thinking about precious stones, but also coral, shell, leather, bone, fossils, wood, marble, porous stones.
Okay, so as rhodium plating works through electricity, any metal that was in the solution will be rhodium plated. Anything else that no electrical current goes through will not be rhodium plated. So that's the first part of the question. But what you have to be careful with, you cannot put very delicate stones or pearls in a rhodium solution, because the rhodium solution will actually damage the stones. I think we've had a problem in the past with peridot. Peridot did not like our rhodium solution. We use a cold rhodium solution here in our workshop. And I think because of the chemicals and obviously the rhodium within that solution attacked the peridot, and it ruined the peridot that we put in. So I wouldn't put leather in the solution, because that's going to be soaking up the rhodium solution, and that wouldn't be good, because that's going to be very hard to get the rhodium solution out of the leather. So nothing really porous. Take care with anything that's precious, like an opal or emeralds, or as I said, peridots, pearls, that sort of thing. They do not like a rhodium solution, but most other items you can put it in. That was the question. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, bone is going to be slightly porous, so that's going to soak up the rhodium solution as well. So I wouldn't put bone in. Fossils, I would have thought fossils are pretty hard. Yeah, so fossils I would put in, but experiment before you put your final piece in the rhodium solution, just in case the solution does attack what you put into it. But it won't plate the non-electrical, non-metal, I'm having problem with my words today, non-metal, anyway, the non-metal bits. Anyway, there we go. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. Yes.
Okay, this next question is from Natalia. When finishing a ring you've been working on, should you burnish it, anneal it, or leave it how it is?
I would, when you finish the ring, polished it. Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
When finishing a ring.
When finishing, I wouldn't bother burnishing it at all. There's no real need to burnish it. I would just simply polish it. Yeah, just buff it with your buff sticks and then polish it, and I would just leave it at that. Basically, there's no need to do anything else to it. Some people will say burnish it to make it harder, burnish ear wires to make them stronger so they don't bend. Okay, perhaps on ear wires or brooch pins, perhaps burnish it, harden the metal and be beneficial, but there's no real need to burnish a piece of jewelry once you've finished it or come to the end of the finishing process. I wouldn't see the point of doing that. Burnishing, you may put marks or scratches into the piece if your burnish it isn't nicely polished. So that is something that I would not bother doing, but just simply put it on the polishing mops or put it on your flex shaft, get a nice shine to it, and I think you should be fine with that, basically. There we go. Yes, please.
Okay. Gina is asking, I would like to know whether the electric gold tester is worth to get it or not. I am scared of the chemical test. Should I get the electric tester or the chemical?
Yeah, okay, so we've got the acid test in our workshop. Yes, the acid tests are pretty dangerous because the chemicals are pretty strong when you come to do it. You usually have like what's called a touchstone with that. So you would get your piece of precious metal, you would simply scrape that over the touchstone, which is a very slightly gritty type of metal. That would leave a streak upon the gold, the touchstone. Then you would get your drop of acid to put upon that streak. And then obviously what happens to that acid then relates to what quality of your metal is. If you're scared of using the acids, perhaps put a mask and some gloves on. The electric tests are pretty accurate. I must admit, I have used a few of them in the past. They're a lot safer. Obviously, there's no chemicals involved. And they, as long as you make sure that when you have it first, you do check and test that it is reading what the metal is initially. And that's always important with something with electrical testers. Things can go wrong and it may stray out of accuracy. So always check that. But if you're scared of the acid, an electrical tester, I think there's one called Midas Touch, and they're pretty good. So yeah, just go for that. If you've got a lot of testing to do of any metal that is an hallmark and you're not sure what it is. Yeah. Nice question. Yes, Louise, next question.
Okay, this next question is from Andreas. Do you stock your silver supplies and how do you buy your silver?
Do you
stock your silver supplies and how do you buy your silver? Are you buying exact amounts for a project or do you have different bits and shapes in stock?
All right, so I've got a roller mill. And so what I do is just simply buy perhaps 2 or 3 different stock sizes of metal. So I would buy perhaps 3mm square wire because I've got a roller mill and I can take that 3mm down square wire to whatever size I want. I can use the reason I'm looking over you can roller mills by here, or I can simply use the D-sections to D-section it. I can use the flat parts of the roller mill and I can make it whatever thickness I want. If it comes to sheet, I would use something perhaps 1.5, 2mm sheet, and I would buy a section of that. And from that, I would cut the piece off that I need, and I can roll it down using the rolling mill. So that is where a rolling mill really does come in handy, because you don't have to buy an awful lot of stock to fulfill your orders or the projects that you're making. You can roll down the metal to the size that you require, and you can play around with thicknesses and diameters and dimensions of metal instead of actually having to work out exactly what you want and order the exact size then from the bullion dealers. If you do happen to not have a rolling mill, just assess what projects you've got to do and what sort of sizes that you've used in the past. So round wire is always handy to have. Obviously square wire, not an awful lot of use at the moment for me for square wire, but sheet I would buy it in whatever thickness you want. If you're doing bezel setting, you would perhaps use 0.5 millimeter or 3/4 millimeter thick for the base. If that's what you use, get a little bit more in to do those particular projects. But if you can afford it, get a rolling mill. Even though it's quite costly, you won't have to stock a whole array of different stock sizes of silver to fulfill your projects, because you can use the rolling mill to make it whatever size you want. And if you want to do a project this afternoon and you need 0.5 millimeter thick metal and you don't happen to have it in stock, instead of ringing up the bullion dealer waiting for that to come in, get your rolling mill, take your 2mm, take it down to the correct size, and you can do the project there and then. So a rolling mill, absolutely essential for me, and save up and get a nice good one with a nice gearbox on it. So that's about the best answer I can give. Excellent, thank you. Yes, please.
Okay, Mike is asking about ultrasonic cleaners. What is the lowest number on the Mohs scale to put in the ultrasonic? Also, steam machine, when would you use it and what stones on the Mohs scale can take the heat?
Okay, so ultrasonic. Never put any emeralds in an ultrasonic to start off with. A lot of emeralds that you buy are oil filled. They're filled under pressure with oil. That fills the inclusions, the cracks and the crevices within emeralds, so they look better. You put an emerald in an ultrasonic, the ultrasonic will take all that oil out and begin to be left with an awful, awful looking stone. You can put your diamonds in it, you can put sapphires in it, you can put rubies in it. I would come down to what's topaz, 6, 7 on the Mohs hardness. I wouldn't go anything less than that. It's just far, far too risky. If you have something like an emerald, or perhaps have a pearl ring that you do want to put in the ultrasonic, try and leave it out of the ultrasonic. Hold on to that stone, hold on to the pearl with your fingers, and just dip the rest of the metal in the ultrasonic, so the ultrasonic has the effect on the metal and not on the stone. Steamer, exactly the same. I would not put any emeralds under a steamer, because the steamer is under pressure. It's hotter than 100 degrees, and again, it will blast out the oil that is within the emeralds. Same with the pearls. Topaz, I'd be very, very careful with, but you could still do that. When would I use a steam cleaner? If you've got a lot of dirt that's trapped behind the stones, if you've got a basket work that you want to do some work on, you've just had it in for repair, and there's lots of dirt from cumulative years of dirt and skin and all sorts of things, well, then you're going to need to get that out before you solder it. Otherwise, all that's going to burn, and you're going to have a heck of a job trying to get that out of the back of the ring. Steam cleaner, absolutely brilliant. When you come to repair jewelry, because you can clean the item before you actually work on it. If you're looking at buying a steam cleaner, it'd be ideal if you do a lot of close-up work, some very small little scale work, micro pave work, that you have to get all the dirt out and all the polish out from behind the stones. Absolutely brilliant. It's not essential. I would buy an ultrasonic first of all over a steam cleaner, but if you do a lot of repairs or a lot of very fine work, a steam cleaner is absolutely brilliant, but they are expensive. I think that I bought one a few months ago. I think it was about £1,300, as opposed to an ultrasonic that may cost you between £200 and £400. So go for an ultrasonic first of all. Most hardness up to about 1 to 6, perhaps 6 to 10. Yes, they should be okay. There we go. Next question, Louise. Thank you.
Okay, Isabel is next. Can you fill a gap with solder, and how or in what conditions?
I always say that solder doesn't fill gaps. Solder always likes to flow between two surfaces that are touching because of the capillary action, which is a bit of a lie, because yes, solder will fill holes, it will fill gaps. The reason why I don't suggest you use solder to fill holes and gaps is because the solder is not the same metal as what you're putting the solder onto. It is silver solder, or yes, it is gold solder, but the alloy content is completely different. If you've got 9 carat metal, the solder is 9 carat, but it's made up of different composition. And especially when you come to use silver and you use hard solder or medium solder or easy solder, the alloy content is different, and the color of that solder does not match the rest of your silver. Hard solder contains more silver, so it is going to be a pretty good match, but I would never use solder to fill a gap on purpose. If you do have a gap to fill, say you've got a ring shank that comes together and it's not quite parallel, they're not quite fitting, I always pass a blade through it and make sure that your faces come together nice and close fitting. If you've got a hole that you drilled in the wrong place and you need to fit it, then get some little round wire and put the round wire in the hole. Make sure it's nice and tight, then solder it, and you're going to get a better finish because there's hardly any solder showing. So yes, solder will fill some slight gaps. It won't necessarily like filling slight gaps. Plus, if that solder does fill the gap, when it actually cools down, it contracts. So say you've got a nice flat plate and you want to fill a hole in the flat plate, the solder will actually cool down and there'll be a slight dip where your solder is. So it's not the ideal situation. So I would not use solder to fill a gap. Plug it with the parent metal that you've got.
Shivani is asking, as a jeweler, do you make your own earring clasps such as huggies and hinges, or do you source them as pre-manufactured items?
Okay. Depending upon the piece that you are making, if you're making something in 18 karat, making something in platinum, making something full of diamonds, then it's always nice to make something by hand from start to finish without having to buy in any pre-made components. Plus the accuracy of those bought-in components are going to be really, really precise. If you're good at making hinges and knuckles, then by all means have a go and make them yourself. But say you're making a silver pair of earrings, the time it takes to construct a knuckle and the hinges and so forth in silver, the time taken really outweighs the cost of what you can actually sell that item for. Brilliant for practice, absolutely. So say it takes you an hour to make the hinge on a silver pair of Huggies. Well, then if you're working on £40 an hour just to cover your costs, well, that's £40 before you've done anything else to those pair of earrings. In fact, double that, that's 80. So then you're looking at twice the price. If you're making them in gold or 18 karat gold or platinum, well, then that amount of money can be absorbed into the piece itself. So would I make it myself? Yes, if it was a high-end, fine piece of jewelry, I would practice in silver. It's always great to practice techniques in silver. Would I make them if I was making a pair of silver Huggies? I don't think I would if I was actually selling it. If I was making it for a present, well, then it's great, isn't it? You can always make them completely handmade. Commercial-wise, silver, I don't think it'd be completely worthwhile doing it. I would always try and buy in the components if need be. But obviously, if there's nothing available to you, well, then yes, you're going to have to try and make up something by hand. Yeah. Next question, Louise. Thank you first.
How do you work, do you work much in base metals such as copper, brass, and nickel? And can you comment some tips to work with these?
I don't work an awful lot, in fact, hardly ever in a base metal. I primarily use, obviously, platinum, gold, and silver. Very rarely use copper, very rarely use brass at all. Limited experience, so I can't really comment on any hints and tips to work with those metals. You can use silver solder still when you come to put them together. Use the little amount of silver solder, otherwise the joins are going to show if you're using copper. I'm sure you can get a copper solder or something that you can actually put over the silver solder once you've done it to disguise the join if it's on copper. But I can't really offer any sort of advice, unfortunately, on working in base metals. I just don't have the experience, I'm afraid. So sorry about that.
Okay.
Next question, yes.
Yes. Bill would like to know, what is the best way to protect an opal when resizing a ring, protecting an opal?
Okay, so yeah, I would use a product called something like Cool Heat or a thermogel. It's a jelly-like substance that you would put upon your soldering block. You'd get a nice little mound of it. Then you would get your ring that you're working on, perhaps your opal. You would then put that into the Cool Heat or the thermogel. It's like a blue substance. You would squash that around the stone. Make sure it's a good thickness all the way around, at least around about 10 millimeters all the way around. And you then would have the little bit of a metal that is exposed on the outside of that gel, and you could work on it fairly safely. If it's silver, silver conducts the heat really, really quickly. So you've got to be in and out really fast. Something like these little torches here are not going to be hot enough to be able to do any decent work when it comes to precious precious stones like opals, because it takes too long to heat the piece up. And even though the thermogel or the Cool Heat does protect the stone, it only protects it to a certain degree. Too much heat, the jelly-like substance or the cream actually starts to dry out, and then it ruins then the thermal properties of that, and it allows the heat to get to the stone, and the stone can be ruined. I've had quite a few mistakes where I've actually used thermogel in the past, and I've been there too long with the torch, and I've actually ruined one or two pieces because of that. Some people will put it inside a potato, which is quite a strange one, if you ask me. Get a potato and cut it in half and put the stone in that and leaving the piece on the outside. Very strange. Some people will actually have a little cap full of water and put some cotton wool around the stone and put the stone upside down, the ring upside down in the little cap. So there's water in the cap, and the water then keeps the cotton wool nice and moist, and they work on it, add in water to the cap as it dries out. That's another technique that you can use, although I don't do that because you've got to keep concentrating on heating the piece and squirting water into the cap to keep the stone nice and cool. But if you can, the best thing to do is to take the stone out whilst you work on it. Wouldn't even try and consider doing retipping or any claw work or anything near the stone, because it's not going to work. I'd always try and remove the stone. And if you do have to remove the stone to work on, advise your client beforehand and say there's no other way you're going to be able to do it. Or you may have access to a laser welder or a puck machine that can actually do work quite close to the stone, and you can use that if that doesn't generate an awful lot of heat. So you can use a laser welder or a puck quite close to an opal. If you're using a normal handheld torch or a Smith's little torch, use some thermogel, use some cool heat, and that would be absolutely fabulous. Next question, Louise.
Okay, this is from Silver Pearls. What is your favourite tool to use for stone setting? For example, I've seen some pros use a GRS graving tools and actually remove minimal amounts of metal, burnishes, etc.
Okay, yeah, you can use, people use the GRS Graver Mac, which is an engraving machine, handheld compressed air that they use. That it's like a reciprocating action, back and forth, that would help to burnish over a bezel, for instance. But the cost of that machine plus the compressor is an awful lot of money. What I would suggest you do is that if you have a flex shaft, I would get a hammer action handpiece like this one. I think we talked about this in last week's question and answer film, talking about the anvils, and a little hammer action handpiece is really, really beneficial because it simply replaces the quick release handpiece or your Jacob's check handpiece on your pendant drill. And again, this is a reciprocating action. It'll come along and hammer a bezel over if it is quite heavy. Or yes, you can use I got too many drawers here. Or you can use a nice, simple, straight-sided burnisher like this, or one of these little prong pushers, bezel pushers, and even you can use a bezel rocker as well that looks something like this to burnish the metal over. I don't tend to use the bezel rocker. I find that it slips a little bit too much. I would always go for a burnisher, that we have nice straight-sided burnisher or a curved burnisher, nicely polished belly here, or looking at this one here that has a slight groove down the edge, and that will locate in the top of the bezel that you can ease the bezel over onto the stone. And then also you've got to think about how you're going to hold that piece as well. Have a ring clamp, something like this, which is the wedge style ring clamp to put the ring into, and you can simply hold that. And if we're talking about the GRS, well, then you can always get the GRS Benchmate system that would fit onto your dovetail plate by here, that would really hold the ring or whatever you've got in place, and you've got two hands free that you can then maneuver the piece around, and you should be able to burnish it. But so yeah, the GRS Graver Mac engraving machine is brilliant if you've got one, but I think it's a necessary purchase if all you've got to do is just put some bezels over. But it is very, very good. It's also very good for texturing. But a hammer action handpiece like this one that will slip onto your flex shaft, whether it's a Euro style fit-in or continental, you can buy these in either fit-ins, and these are absolutely brilliant. And you can also do texturing by altering the ends of the anvils as well. But so check out last week's film. We discussed hammer action handpieces quite a bit, so go and check that out. Yes, Louise, my voice is going now. Go.
Okay.
All right.
Lynn is asking, I have a GRS bench pin and wondered what is the best type of GRS vise setup?
Okay. So in the other room, I've got a shelf that would fit onto the dovetail plate that we've got in front of us by here. In fact, I'll do one of my 20-second runs again, shall I? You ready for this?
Should we count you down?
20 seconds. I'm just going to run into the front room and come straight
I think you can do it
back. In fact, I may run downstairs and get my bench mate is there. I've got, right, okay, give me countdown. I'm just going to nip into the other room. Go.
20.
I didn't need to go that way. I need to go this way because they're on my shelf. See, I'm just far too organised. Until I can't find my hammer. You're right there, Lou. Yeah. So what I've got is you can buy these little shelves, okay, from GRS, and they've got the attachments on the back here. They will simply pop onto your dovetail plate here, and from here then you can use a little GRS micro ball upon the shelf. Obviously this is down in front of you down here, and you can look down and you can work on with a GRS ball like this. Absolutely brilliant. And you've got two hands free and you can hold this and maneuver it around to whatever you want to do that way. What was the question again? GRS.
The best type of GRS vise setup with a GRS bench pin.
Okay, so that's a pretty good one. The other you could get, if you do have, no, this is downstairs, but I'm not running down because I can't find it. So the other type is going to be with your Benchmate system. That will fasten upon to the front like that. And they do have a special adapter that looks like this, that would actually fit into and replace this little area here. This little part here comes undone. So this comes off, and there's this little section, the top section is looking just like that, but on a shaft like that, and that then would fit into the GRS. Then you would have right in front of you then a small little vise that will be connected onto your Benchmate system, and that is absolutely brilliant. There's another type of vise that you can buy from GRS that would perhaps fit on a shelf like that. Unfortunately, I don't have one of those, but that's just a simple black vise, very small vise, very similar to the one that I got on the side of me here, that that will actually fit directly onto the dovetail plate in front of you. So that's the cheapest. The most expensive type is going to be the ball vise with the shelf. But any sort of product you buy from GRS, you can always be sure that it is absolutely first class. So the little metal vise that would fit upon the top here is going to be the best and the cheapest option to start off with. But yeah, that was a good question. I love my GRS products. Yes, Louise, next question.
Okay, the next question is from Elizabeth. When setting a stone with an uneven back, like a druzy, what leveling material do you use?
Okay, so someone commented, I think, a few films ago when I said about using sawdust in the back. I can't remember who that was, but he attacked me. He said I was a bit of an amateur and I shouldn't be putting sawdust in the back of my bezels. Personally, I don't, but if you have actual genuine American sort of Navajo turquoise jewelry and you take that apart, they actually do use sawdust in the back, and that acts as a little bit of a cushion. And obviously, because the back of the stone is slightly uneven, the sawdust within the back of the bezel will be compressed and the stone could be nice and level and straight without it rocking. You can use little pieces of cardboard in the back as well. People have been known to use that. If it's an open back setting, that's going to be a really, really awkward, because what you're going to have to do then is cut the bearing that the stone sits on at the right undulation to fit the right positioning of the stone. So that would be really, really awkward to do. So a closed back setting, don't attack me again, but yes, you can use sawdust. You can use actually some epoxy, also epoxy resin. some cement in the bottom of the cup where the stone is going to go, and that would hold the stone nice and level. Let that set, and then you can burnish the metal around. So that's the best thing. Or perhaps you could actually grind the back of the stone completely flat as well on some diamond paper. Or if you've got a jewel tool, for instance, you can use the 3M papers on that, and you can get a nice flat back to your stone, and then you don't have to then worry about any type of leveling material. Yes, Louise, next question.
Okay, Corbett is asking, I'm making a pair of tiny studs, 4mm, and struggling to hold the pieces for filing and drilling and polishing. Is there a good way to hold such small pieces when working?
Okay, let's have a look. 4mm. I just got too many drawers here. You can use something like these. These are called little guillotine clamps that you can use. These ones are from New Concepts, K-N-E-W, New Concepts. You can use these. They're absolutely fantastic. The jaw's open. You can put your earring within there, close that up, and then that will hold it nicely. And you can use this to file on and to work on with the piece. If you have something that is slightly unusual, well, then you can get some GRS Thermolock or some jet set that you can put within here when it's nice and soft, and put the earring in place. So when you clamp it, the Thermolock or the jet set will actually mold itself around the earring itself whilst you're working on it. That's absolutely brilliant to do. Failing that, you can use something like this, which is a pin vise that you could hold. Say you've got a cluster, or you've got a solitaire and you have the single ear wire. You could put the ear wire into the jaw here, tighten that up, then you've got this to hold on to whilst you work on the top of the earring as well. That would be your best bet. What else can I think of? You could always use your ring clamps as well to hold something. The wedge style ring clamps here, you can always use this to put the earring in that would hold it in place. And because it's got leather on the inside, it's not really going to hurt the earring too much. But that's the best way. I think if you've got some, as I said, some Thermolock or some jet set, which is like a thermo set in plastic, you can actually use that to hold the earring into place, and then warm that up then to take the earring out. And if you've got quite a few to do, it'd be an ideal way to make up a little jig to hold the actual earrings in place, and you can work on them all at the same time, and then warm it up to remove the earrings afterwards. That would be your best bet if you've got something very small. What else can we use? That would be about it. Parallel pliers perhaps to hold it. But yeah, I think those would be your best bet. Or you could even go back to your little vise, your little GRS little ball vise like this, and you can always use that to put the earring into. Use this to close it up, and you can put the earring within the top plate here to hold on to it, and then you've got this nice large area to control the earring. There we go. Okie dokies. How's that then? Cool. Next question, please. Okay,
Bhavesh is asking, please show the theory used to make beading tools, and in particular explain how to take the finishing of the hole.
Is the hole of the ball? I'm not quite sure on that, but I'm not quite sure. Okay.
Please show the theory used to make beading tools.
Okay, so a beading tool is simply a small little tool with a little concave hole in the top, I suppose you could call it. A lot of people will make their own. How would you make your own? You would perhaps get an old burr that you would, let's get my pad out here and my pencil. So what you would do, I'll try and find it. There we go. Okay, so what you would do, you would get, say you've got, we go back to these burrs. Say you've got a burr and you completely worn it out and you've actually ruined it. So what I would do is snap that off. Then all you're left with then is going to be that little bit of metal because you've taken the top off it. I would then file that down to get a nice general taper. on the actual thing itself. So you've got this sort of look like that. Then you would get what's something like a ball burr or a little carbide round ball burr, and put the ball burr then into this area here that will make a nice semicircular cup. So that would be the profile that you've got there. And because it's carbide, it's going to leave a lovely, lovely finish. You get different size carbide balls to do your beading tool. And that's basically how people do make beading tools. You can also buy a special beading tool sharpener. I can't remember what the website's called now, but I've actually got one downstairs, but it's a bit late now for me to go and run and get it. But if you check out my Instagram, which is @_the_bench_UK, you want to tap that down in the chat, please, Louise, so people can go and see to that. That's my Instagram name. I've done a few little posts on there, and the links are underneath the posts. It's a Russian guy who developed this beading tool sharpener, so that would be absolutely ideal for that type of process. But that's how beading tools are made. Then obviously then you get your beading tool, you would get what you needed to be beaded, put the beading tool on top and rotate it with your hand, and that would produce a nice bead, ideal for doing something like pave work or raising some little claws or some little grains. And that is how you would make a beading tool. That's it, and _UK. Excellent, well done, excellent. So that's my Instagram name. Go to that, and you should be able to see the tour that I did about 3 or 4 months ago. Okay, so really running out of time. It's about 3 minutes to go. I think a couple more questions should be sufficient here. Yes. What have we got, Louise?
Oh, I've lost my place now. How far did we get? I'm just going to randomly, because I've lost my place. Okay. So, how do I protect my fingers while polishing? Is the green tape going to do the job? And what should I be aware of while working? Talking about security. Oh, I picked a really long question, haven't I? Acids, fire. Do I need ventilation in the room? We could talk about this all day, couldn't we?
We could. Okay, so I'll answer your first question. Yes, alligator tape, crocodile skin. Absolutely brilliant. Let's pop that way. I use it pretty much all the time. I got a baddie on my thumb, so I got a normal little plaster right at them. You laughing for that? Badly, I caught my thumb. So I got a plaster on it. But if I'm working, I would use this. This is the alligator tape, the green tape. Absolutely fantastic. I would use this all the time. Let me see. So what I've got here is this is an old one. Can I find the end? It's a bit like sellotape, isn't it? You can never quite find the end. Okay, I won't bother trying to find the end. But yes, I would use the green tape. What I would do is wrap it around your finger, perhaps 2 or 3 times initially, break a piece off or snap it off, make a piece then that's about 50 centimeters long, fold it in half, bend it over the end of your finger, and then wrap it a couple more times then around. And that will really give your fingers or your thumbs a lot of protection. I did a quick film on the rhino skins as well, the black, almost like fabric protectors that go over your fingers. They're really, really good, but they tend to be quite expensive for their use. You can use leather little mitts to go over your fingers as well, and that protects your fingers, especially if you're polishing. But if you're working on the bench and you need the versatility and you need to be able to feel through what you have put on your fingers, well, then this tape is going to be absolutely fantastic. I keep saying absolutely fantastic because everything is absolutely fantastic at the moment. It's the way I am. So yes, use this tape. It is absolutely fantastic. Yeah, so I would use this to protect your fingers, especially if you're working and perhaps you get a bit of a cut on the end of it, or they're really, really sore. I would use this, and you can always take it off, put it to the one side once you perhaps go and have your lunch or go and serve a customer, come back, stick it on the end of your finger, on the end of your thumb, and you can carry on working. And I've been known to go home at the end of the day with these stuck on my fingers because I can simply forget that I've got them in place. Okay, do we have, they are, yeah, they're absolutely everywhere in the house over Christmas time. Yeah. Okay, one last question, I think, Louise. We have time for one more?
Okay, Lena is asking, do I need to anneal the silver after texturing it if I only want to saw afterwards? If I don't anneal the pieces, are they going to break?
Okay, so no, you don't need to anneal it if you're just simply sawing it afterwards. The metal will certainly not break. Certainly metal will not fracture. The metal will only fracture if then you repeatedly bend it, simply by texturing it, whether you're passing it through the rolling mill or whether you're actually hammering it. It's not going to be hard enough that it's going to snap or break. You don't need to anneal it. Obviously, if you're going to be shaping it or putting it through the doming punches, or you need to bend it into a ring shank, well then yes, because you've worked hard on the metal, it would need to be annealed. But if you just texture it and bring it onto your actual peg here, and you want to simply saw it, well then you don't need to anneal it at all. So no, you should be completely fine with that. Hours up. We could talk for hours, couldn't we?
You could.
I could talk for hours. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be talking for 12 hours very shortly. Do we have the link? Excellent. So the link that we need you to click on to go and fill out the survey. As I said, Louise and I are going to be doing a 12-hour live stream. We're going to be doing it from, say, 9 o'clock in the morning to 9 o'clock at night, or perhaps 7 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock at night. Haven't quite decided yet, and that's where you come in. We want you to go through the survey, let us know out of the selection of topics that we've put down, what topics you want to see the most, what topics you want to see the least. You get 3 choices, and also what country you're in. Now, if you're in the US, you obviously have East Coast and West Coast. So if you put down USA, please put whether you're sort of East or West, Eastern time, or is it Pacific time? I'm not quite sure. Whichever it is, because there's about like a 5-hour difference. So we need to know roughly what time that you are going to be tuning in. Then we can organize the timetable so we can put perhaps soldering together at one particular time that would suit the majority of people and so forth. And I think so far we've had a couple of hundred replies already. 500. About 500 replies so far. Absolutely fantastic already, because the survey went out to all the At The Bench members, as you can see down here, atthebench.com, online jewelry training website. So we can tailor what content we've got to what you want to see. That's going to be on a Saturday within the next month, I would have thought. We haven't quite finalized a date, but obviously we will certainly let you know in plenty of time. We don't expect you to hang around for 12 hours, but if you want to, happy for you to join us.
The open feedback as well on that is really important, because a lot of people have put comments in the bottom of that survey which help us to improve everything, and that's all we want to do really, is do things better. So like issues with the sound and things like that, really is all the comments have been really, really kind and really lovely, and lots of really good constructive feedback as well. Excellent. Which make us do things better. Yeah.
Okay. So basically we're just seeing this from our point of view, but you're seeing it from the viewer's point of view. So anything that you want us to do, anything you want us to experiment with, whether you want us to, I don't know, just get rid of the bench and have 2 chairs and Louise and I will just chat about jewelry and so forth. Yeah, we're happy to do that. And that's what we're sort of planning on doing on our 12-hour marathon session. As I said, there's going to be giveaways from jewelry tool suppliers. We've got discounts from companies, discount codes available on the day if you want to order things. As I said, we got a Durston rolling mill to give away to 1 person, and that will be shipped to anywhere in the world. And we're going to be giving away like what we used to. We used to give away pens, At The Bench mugs, At The Bench mouse mats, At The Bench t-shirts, and so forth. So that's what we're going to be doing. Anything that we need to say? Anything that's on the chats that we need to address at all?
I don't think so. If people, Wendy is saying that she's forgot to put Pacific time, because we didn't actually ask, did we, when we sent out the initial survey? So what do we do now for people who...
Just have to take the average, aren't we, I think, for that.
Okay.
Yeah, for that one. But if you do fill out the survey, please make sure that you do put which time zone. Some countries, like Russia, has like like a few time zones. So put down which time zone you're in. That would really, really help us formulate the times that people are going to be coming on and what they want to see.
Yes, you've done with the data and the stats, then.
So yeah, Louise just loves the actual stats and putting it all together and finding out who wants to watch at what time. So that's what we're going to be doing over the next month or so. Let you know in plenty of time. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to last because I've lasted an hour and my throat is going already. But we're going to be doing some live demonstrations. I think we're going to be doing some casting, cuttlefish casting, that sort of thing. It's going to be really, really good fun.
And we'd all love to know now, when are you going to do your book? That's been in the chat.
People still asking my book.
Yeah.
It's still not coming forth at the moment. I just haven't got time to do it at the moment. But I've got this book. I got this book in my head. I just need to get it down on paper. Someone mentioned that you can get an app that you can just simply talk into it and it'll transcribe it for you. Perhaps that might be an idea when I'm out and about. Anyway. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for all of you who have been on today. 51 likes. Thank you very much. Do appreciate that. If you're watching this on YouTube, I think we must have done our 12-hour quarantine stream already. But if you watch that, thank you very much. And that sounds really strange. But thank you for everybody who's come on this afternoon. Really, really do appreciate it. What's Tanya saying? Can't wait for the 12-hour. More demos. I've been doing, yeah. So everybody's really excited about this. I'm really excited. Louise is absolutely panicking because, well, she's not quite sure what we're going to be doing really yet.
Yeah, so what are you going to say next?
Never what I'm going to do. So fill out the survey, click the link. I think it's that way. Fill it out. Really would appreciate it. And if you watch it on replay and it's over the next couple of weeks after this replay, still click on it. Let us know what you want to see, when you want to see it, what country you're in, any hints and tips or anything you want to see, improvements on these questions and answers and so forth, please put it in the survey. We would love to read every single one of them. Bully and Bully, I have received your bits of silver. Thank you, Mark, for those. Haven't received anything to go in my little crates yet, so we're still waiting on that. But thank you very much for the silver. I know Mark, Bully and Bully's in the chat down here, said that he's going to be doing giving us something to give away as well on the day, which is really, really nice. If you know of any manufacturers or suppliers that you give them this stream, because we want to give stuff away. We want to give stuff away to our viewers as well. I think that'd be really good. So any manufacturers or anybody out there who wants to get involved, just get in contact with us. We'd absolutely love you too. Yes, Louise.
And a lot of people are asking about itinerary or timetable for the live stream, the long live stream.
Yeah.
So we can do that based on your feedback, really. So there will be an itinerary, a timetable for the whole 12 hours.
The whole 12 hours. So we will be putting together a timetable. And I think what we're going to be planning on doing is sort of doing giveaways every hour. We're going to be doing demonstrations every other hour. We're going to have to get a few gins going. I think that's not gin today. That was just some squash today. So yeah, so we're going to be doing live demonstrations every other hour. We're going to try and do 6 or 8 of those giveaways. Yeah, and we're going to sit down and have a chat as well. So that's what we're going to be doing. So stay tuned for that. But everybody, thank you very much for coming on today. 156 of you still on. Thank you very much. I could talk for hours, but Louise wants to go home. Oh, you're fine, are you? Okay.
See, this is why we can't put you on the telly.
Why is that? Because the program's overrun. All right, I'm going to go. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for joining me this afternoon. Don't forget, I think we've got another question and answer next week. Same time, was it 3 o'clock next week? You working?
Yeah. Not Wednesday, but it's better to keep it the same time every week, I think.
Yeah,
well, unless the majority of people find it, whatever.
Okay, all right. So again, just let me know in the chat. Let me know, is the time that we do it today, which is 3:30 here in the UK, is that a good time, or do you want to do it at say 3 o'clock, or perhaps a bit later in the afternoon? Just let us know in the chat. Would appreciate it. But thank you all for joining me. We will see you all next week. and we shall put a little post out to say when we're going to be live next week, and we'll certainly collate all the answers from the surveys if you'd like to fill it in. Much appreciated. Thank you everybody who's still looking and still listening. Thank you all. I will see you, we will see you, and a big thank you to Louise this week, because I didn't thank her last week, even though I did mention Jasmine for moderating today. So thank you both very much indeed. We will all see you next week. So everybody, take care. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.